Good afternoon. Welcome to the Homes of Hope Fiji podcast. I'm your host for today, Joshua. With me is Sue Taylor, an expert on trauma and trauma-informed care. How are you today, Sue Taylor?
I'm very good, thank you.
Oh.
Yes, finally
Well,
a little bit warm here.
Well, thank you for being on the show again. To our listeners, the past few episodes that we've had, we've spoke on trauma. We spoke on the ripple effects of trauma. Then we went on to speak about generational trauma. And then the last episode we spoke about hurt people. And I think that was also a heavy subject to touch on. And Sutela, would you like to talk about what episode we'll be, or what subject you'll be talking about today?
Right, sure, thanks Josh.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other saying that we have with hurt people is healed people heal people. And so as we begin the healing journey through our own self-awareness of how our story and our trauma may be impacting my family in a negative way, as we get that awareness, we begin to heal. And as we heal, we can then help others to heal.
Yeah.
And so that's my passion, is to see people healed, because it's as they heal, they can influence others, and that's what we want to see happening. So today, I've decided that I'd like to ask Josh about his story of his own healing and how his healing is helping his family, because I think this story needs to be heard, that as people heal, they can bring about healing in the lives of others. And that's what we're here today to look at, is how you've begun this healing journey, Josh, and how this is impacting yourself, your children, your family, and your community. So would you mind just sharing a little about your story with us today?
Sure. I never looked at things that I used to go through until we had the trauma workshop last week. Because we always, as a Rutuman and someone that's been brought up old school, we, as a man, you deal with all your emotions by yourself. There's no one that we can go and talk to about it.
Yeah.
So I think it took a while to sit myself down and just go through my own emotions. We were raised, I was raised on yes and no,
Do as I say.
do as I say, the way of the man,
Yes.
iron way. Yeah?
Yes.
And so I think how I treat my children now is mirrored on how I was raised.
Right.
And it was not until the workshop that we went through that I realized that while I am there in the home physically, I am not attached to my children, and I think that kind of hurt, thinking about it.
Right. You're absent emotionally.
Yeah, exactly, absent emotionally.
Yeah.
And you spoke about mindfulness, being more self-aware. And while these topics are a bit alien to us here in the South Pacific, I just want to get it out there that it's something that everyone has to try and do, especially now and with what's happening around us. It's always good to just take a step back. You just think, meditate if you can, and just get through, or just heal yourself. Yeah, because I seen at home, whatever had happened to me when I was growing up, I would start to dish it to my children. I treat my kids like how I was raised. One word says it. It's a yes or it's a no.
Yes.
You run or you walk or you crawl. It doesn't matter. At least you get what's supposed to be done. Yeah, and I think just being a part of the workshop, understanding more about trauma, and if I'm hurt, I'm hurting others. I think that I took a step back and I had to realize, like, okay, I don't want my kids to go through what I went through, and I definitely don't want their kids to go what they're going through, you know. Yeah.
Yes, so you don't want to pass on that generational trauma, and so that you want to become the instrument of healing.
That's right, yeah.
And that's awesome. And I really admire your honesty in actually saying that, because, you know, I think that's what it's going to take here in Fiji, is for men to stand up, own it. Just like I said, put your hand up for generational trauma.
Yeah.
Now it's the men have got to stand up and say, hey, I need to change, because, you know, you are central in the family, and you can really bring change and healing into that family just by your own self-awareness, and then how you need to be able to interact with your children. And you mentioned before being emotionally unavailable. Well, I guess this change has then got to become you are emotionally available to your children, and you're teaching them that it's actually okay to have emotions.
That's right.
It doesn't mean that you've got free rein and you can shout and disobey and be very angry. No, but it's emotions are normal, and it's okay to have emotions, but you have to learn to regulate, as you mentioned last episode about we have to regulate our emotions, because if we don't regulate those emotions, we can't relate to one another. And you're saying you want to be able to be more emotionally available to your children now, and help them to express how they are feeling. And, you know, teaching children to express how they are feeling, to express their emotions, can also protect them. I'm not sure if you know that, but if children express their emotions and feel the sense of freedom to do that they won't be told to be quiet and shut up, then maybe what the children are going to tell us is something like someone is hurting them, someone is bullying them at school, someone maybe touched them inappropriately. We want children to have the freedom to be able to tell us that. And so if they feel it is safe to express their emotions, they'll talk to you and open up to you. Because, you know, I think abuse happens with silence, and in a culture of it's not okay to say anything. And healing and the future of protection is about giving voice to what is hurting me, and that's going to be really important. So as you said about, you know, you want to be more available to your children, then teaching them that if you have a worry, come to me. I'm listening. I'm here. I've got your back. I will listen. You tell me how you are feeling, what's upsetting you, what's hurting you. Because if you can help children to manage those big emotions, then that keeps them safe. Because if anything goes wrong, instead of just shutting down and refusing to talk about it, they can heal right away. You can heal it quickly. And does that sound a good idea for your family? I mean, is that...
No, it does. It does sound... It sounds very good. And I do agree. I do agree with unchecked emotions. I think that's very dangerous. Well, not only for kids, but for adults as well.
Yes.
And that happens a lot. We have lots of cases where people, they do things because they aren't able to control their emotions. And that's, I think, that's very dangerous. Not only to you yourself, but to those around you. Because if you're unable, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're unable to handle all your emotions and you're always unstable at many times, then you create not only for yourself, but the whole surrounding, unsafe spaces. I mean,
Well, that's all connected to that generational trauma that we talked about. That if we shut down our emotions and we don't talk about it, remember I talked about how we either lash out and we get angry and we shout and we use verbal abuse and we hurt others, because hurt people, or we shut down and we go into that mode where we just avoid, withdraw, we emotionally withdraw. We're not emotionally available.
Yeah.
We withdraw. And so that's a very scary place for children, because they feel that you're not emotionally available, or if I do say something, then maybe you're going to lash out at me.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think it's really important for that skill to be taught to many people, that it's okay to talk,
That's
that
right.
you need to express how you are feeling. And as you say, some adults, they don't know how to control that emotion, and they lash out and hurt others. And it can be male and female that lash out and hurt others. But when someone hurts another, there's usually a person which we call victim, which is not a very nice word. But that person often shuts down and says nothing out of fear. Because it's fear that causes us to shut down. We fear what might happen next.
That's right.
But healing can only take place when we start to give voice to those emotions.
Yeah, I do agree. Yeah. Also, healing also starts to take place when you put your hands up and you say enough's enough. You know, you spoke about generational trauma and wanting to end that cycle and become better. It's taking ownership, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, and then that in turn starts the positive ripple.
Yes, that's
you know?
right.
So it's good having this talk, because I think everything we've spoken about on each episode has been linked. You know, there's a link to everything. And, you know, I think it's good for us here in Fiji, especially I know our listeners out there, I've heard a few, but, you know, they've been saying, okay, trauma talks, trauma is not for me, you know. A lot of people, how do you phrase it, will be in self-denial, or will be in denial that trauma affects them or their families, you know. But it's something to look at.
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you've shared your story about how you have been challenged, and you have decided to make the change and to be more self-aware in the way that you interact with your family.
Yeah.
So remember, we talked last episode, be the change that you want to see in the world. And that's what you are doing, and that's what we challenge every one of you out there, to be the change that you want to see in the world, and it starts here with you. And thank you for listening.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for that talk.
Thank you.
You've heard it. Heal people, heal people. And I just challenge our viewers to take some time just to check themselves, go through their own emotions, get everything in place. Sometimes we are so quick to help others without realizing that we need the most help ourselves. And I think the talk that we've been having, a bit heavy, but I think an issue that needs to be addressed. And Chutela, thank you very much for being on this episode.
Thank you.
Very good talk.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So please leave a comment on the video, and we'll be sure to get back at you. Good luck.